That's right. Bear down, Bears fans. It's time for another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast, Bears Banter, powered by Second City Gridiron. Bill Zimmerman with you. And it is a glorious week in Chicago Bears land, everybody, because your Chicago Bears are in first place in mid to late November in the NFC North. They currently have the 3 seed in the NFC playoffs. This is absolutely incredible. Enjoy it. Let's start right there. We're going to have Kevin Fishbain on from The Athletic in just a little bit. It's always a great interview with Kevin. We'll be talking about all aspects of this Bears team, and we'll have some fun with it along the way, because this is what we need to stress: is have fun. Enjoy this. I could sit here and give you my disdain for Ryan Poles. I could sit here and talk about the salary cap problems they're going to have next year and the raw. I could get into plenty of things to nitpick about this roster, because this is a far from perfect roster. This is not a finished product. This is not, you can't look at this team and compare it to the Philadelphia Eagles and say they're on the same level roster from 1 to 53. But right now, it doesn't matter, because the Chicago Bears continue to find ways to win football games. And look, will this be sustainable forever? Probably not. Is it sustainable for the rest of this season? Hopefully, but we're just going to have to take this week by week and see how much magic that Ben Johnson can shake out of the magic beans that he planted back in August. We don't know where this is going to go, but what we do know is that it's fun. So enjoy it. Block out the noise from the Vikings fans or the Packers fans or the Lions fans or whatever fans talking about how the Bears are frauds, talking about how they don't believe this Bears team is anything, how this Bears team hasn't beaten anybody. Block it all out and enjoy the ride for as long as this ride continues. The ride may continue just for this week. It may end this week. It may ride all the way into the playoffs. The Bears could win playoff games. We don't know how this is going to end. But what we do know is right now, in this moment, it is fun. The Chicago Bears have won 7 of 8 football games. That is the truth. That is 100%. They are not playing Alcorn State. They are not playing Holy Cross. They are not playing Bucknell. They are playing the Minnesota Vikings. They are playing the Las Vegas Raiders. They are playing the Washington Commanders. They are playing NFL teams. The Chicago Bears do not need to apologize for what their schedule looks like. And look, maybe as the schedule toughens up down the stretch, maybe the Bears lose to the Lions, the Niners, the Packers. They finish at 9-8. They miss the playoffs. They finish at 10-7. Maybe still miss the playoffs. It could happen. We don't know how this is going to end. And if they want to call you frauds, then let them, because the Bears have Ben Johnson. The Bears have Caleb Williams. There is confidence that this thing is heading in the right direction, whether it's a full speed freight train or whether it's just progressing along incrementally. It doesn't matter, because the right direction is a direction the Chicago Bears have rarely gone in under George McCaskey. So there's plenty of positives here. It just depends on how many positive the Bears make. Maybe the Bears go 12-5, win the division, have the 2 seed, and lose in the NFC Championship game. And you sit there and say, well, they better win the Super Bowl next year. That's the next step. They may regress a little next year. Maybe next year they only go 10-7 because they need to retool the roster or whatever it might be. It doesn't matter. Maybe they regress because in one-score games they don't win as many. Kansas City Chiefs last year were, I think, 11-0 in one-score games. And this year, I think they're 0-5. And that's the Chiefs. That's Patrick Mahomes. You don't know how everything's going to go from season to season. We can talk about big picture things, and we're going to spend the entire offseason talking about big picture things, and you're probably going to get more negative me because I'm going to start talking about Ryan Poles. And when I talk about Ryan Poles, I get pissed off because I don't trust the guy, and he's here for years and years because the Bears gave him a contract extension, but that's not for now. For now, this is the Chicago Bears. This is Caleb Williams with ice water in his veins. Caleb Williams had a fourth quarter comeback and did not have to throw a pass. Like, that's awesome. How is that happening? Because this team is finding ways to win football games. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. And let's talk about it. And let's talk about this. Let's spend 1 minute on the Minnesota Vikings. And look, J.J. McCarthy has started just a handful of games. He missed his entire rookie season, and now he is where he is. And he will probably get better than where he is right now. But this is what I can say about J.J. McCarthy. Rarely have I seen a quarterback look this lost and figure it out. Like, Josh Allen is the guy we always circle. I know Bears fans have circled Josh Allen a lot because, well, Mitch Trubisky, we wanted the Josh Allen timeline, and Justin Fields, we wanted the Josh Allen timeline. And you want the Josh Allen timeline because he's the one. He's literally in the modern era, and I mean the last like 25 years of football, not going back to John Elway, who stunk for 2 years, because it's not that. This century of football, in terms of quarterbacks that looked like crap for a year or two and figured it out and became great, Josh Allen is it. Because the people that want to throw out Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Alex Smith, Baker Mayfield, any of these guys, are they with the team that drafted them? No, they are not. So if Baker Mayfield becomes a Hall of Famer, it doesn't matter because he wasn't good enough with now. Maybe Cleveland pulled the trigger too fast on that decision. Regardless, he's not doing it with the Cleveland Browns. So when that's the case, then when you are looking at your own quarterback to evaluate, your own first-year, second-year quarterback to evaluate, using Baker Mayfield isn't the example you want to use because the team gave up on him. He bounced around for a couple of years and then figured it out. Josh Allen is the only guy, and that's why people are, oh, well, if Josh Allen could do it, well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you look at your next-door neighbor, and he's worth $55 million. You go, how do you make $55 million? And he says, well, I won the lottery. And you say, oh, if he won the lottery, well, then maybe I can too. Like, that's sometimes the kind of thinking that people have because they're so desperate to have their quarterback make it. And I look at what J.J. McCarthy did, and I've seen J.J. McCarthy in other games this year. This is not me just trying to make a snap judgment off the Chicago Bears game. But watching him miss the way he misses, watching him to turn the ball over at the rate he turns the ball over, it is hard-pressed to imagine that J.J. McCarthy, and I don't care if he's had limited starts, in year two, because that we don't get to just, he had a full year in Kevin O'Connell's, classroom, whiteboard. He should have been learning and absorbing some of that. This is the Jordan Love argument of learning behind Aaron Rodgers. He got to sit behind a really good offense with Sam Darnold for a year and learn. So don't tell me, oh, well, he's only been around and he got hurt, so he's only played 5-6 games. Like, don't just go on that because he should have other aspects of his game that has improved. He is awful. Have fun with 9, whatever you want. J.J. McCarthy is awful. And I know he beat the Bears in the fourth quarter. And I know he threw the touchdown pass that gave him the lead. And Vikings fans, I'm sure you want to cling to that. You want to cling to that. Like the Bears clung to the victories that Mitch Trubisky had about what he could do well. Mitch Trubisky can torch man coverage. Well, Matt Patricia was the only coach that would do man against Mitch Trubisky. And Trubisky threw for 303 touchdowns against Matt Patricia every year. But every other coach didn't play man. And guess what? Mitch couldn't figure it out. Justin Fields, if he could just harness some of this stuff, then all this other, we'll just focus on the running and how much he just zones in on DJ Moore and their connection and not worry about that he's not picking up second or third options down the field, that it's DJ Moore or check down. or run the football. You already look at Justin Fields. He's not as explosive with the football in his hands as he was just a couple years ago because it's not sustainable. Like, we've been that fan base that has clung to, oh, well, it's too early to give up. And yes, J.J. McCarthy could still become a very viable quarterback in the NFL, and he could do it with the Minnesota Vikings. But my God, Vikings fans, open your eyes and really take a look at what this quarterback is. Because I heard rumblings in the spring that Kevin O'Connell was not sold on J.J. McCarthy. And obviously he didn't have a lot of, reps in actual play. So I'm sure this was a lot of JJ responding and about what the right read should be in these situations and everything, and probably not hitting it the way KOC needs him to hit it. So Kevin O'Connell was concerned, which is why they wanted to bring back Sam Darnold, which is why they had conversations about Aaron Rodgers, because they have a win now roster and a rookie quarterback in essence that Kevin O'Connell didn't trust. And it didn't work out. So they commit to J.J. McCarthy, and now we're in the middle of the season, and the Vikings roster, which is as good as it was last year, that went 14-3 or whatever the hell they did, 13-4, whatever they were last year. And all that's changed is the quarterback, and they are a debacle. And that is because J.J. McCarthy is that bad of a football player. Maybe he gets better. I don't see it improving enough. I see Anthony Richardson. I see Josh Rosen. I see that kind of quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. I think the fact that they had Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, and maybe they have limited ceilings. Sam Darnold, the lights got bright against the Rams. He threw 4 interceptions. I get it. Maybe Daniel Jones, when the going gets tough here, the Colts haven't had that difficult of a schedule. Maybe Daniel Jones is still the fatal flaw and that the Colts won't be able to go as far as they're hoping they can go this year. But when you have 2 quarterbacks playing at the level they're playing at for their teams, regardless of potentially limited ceilings, and you threw that away for the potential of what the ceiling of J.J. McCarthy could be, but knowing how low the floor could be, that is a potential mistake that is going to be talked about for years. We're going to be talking about, well, look what the Vikings did in 2028, 2029, 2030. We are still going to be talking about this Vikings decision if J.J. McCarthy looks as bad as he does. But this is a Chicago Bears podcast. And you know what's nice as Bears fans? We, for a change, do not have to panic about our quarterback. We panicked about Caleb Williams last year. Let's be honest. There was plenty of panic. We panicked about Justin Fields for 3 years. We panicked about Mitch Trubisky for 4 years. We've panicked about quarterbacks a lot, and for good reason, because they haven't panned out. We're not panicking about Caleb Williams right now. We're certainly not panicking about Ben Johnson right now. And look, I made a joke. Was it hyperbole? Yes. Was it grounded in some truth? Yes. Ben Johnson is already on the Mount Rushmore of Chicago Bears head coaches, and he's coached 10 games. That is the level that Ben Johnson in this season has done for the Bears. And you sit there and say, Bill, that's ridiculous. Now, look, if you're really going to cut it, there's a guy who won a championship in the early 30s named Ralph Jones. He's probably the 4th guy on the Mount Rushmore, because some of the other coaches that had success was during World War II when George Halas stepped away and did went and served in the military, and they won a championship. But that era of sports is very odd because of the amount of athletes that were missing, and it was a wartime for the country. So we don't really look at that. So Ralph Jones, who won a championship in 1932, whatever it was, he's probably the 4th coach on the Bears coaches of Mount Rushmore, because you got George Halas, you've got Mike Ditka, and you've got Lovie Smith. Those are the 3 that are on there, and they are clearly on there. There is no competition. It is who is the 4th guy. And if you don't want to go back to the 1930s or 1940s, if you just want to say George Halas gets a spot and the 3 best coaches since George Halas, you have a very limited pool that you are picking from, because obviously you got Ditka and you've got Lovie Smith. You're not putting John Fox on there. He was a disaster. You're not putting Matt Eberflus on there. He was a disaster. You're not putting Mark Trestman on there. He was a disaster. No, those three coaches, none of them had a winning record. You got Matt Nagy, 2 8-8s, and the magical 2018 season. Made the playoffs, didn't win a playoff game. So already we've got Matt Nagy with 2 playoff spots and no playoff wins. And that is better than anyone else since Lovie Smith. Dick Duran had the one magical year. They didn't win the playoffs. Like, you're comparing Nagy and Duran. Nagy probably has the better, work. Dave Wanstead never won double-digit victories. You're going to give it to Dave Wanstead? You're going to give it to one of the Bears coaches in the 70s? They made the playoffs once. Like, Matt Nagy is probably the 4th spot on the Bears head coach Mount Rushmore. Ben Johnson, if they make the playoffs and win, I think he legitimately, if they win one playoff game this year, he 100% legitimately is the Bears' 4th coach on Mount Rushmore after one season. I think you can argue he's already there, because who do you trust? You've watched Ben Johnson coach. You've seen what this team has rallied around him. Who do you trust? I trust Ben Johnson more than I trust any of these other coaches. Matt Nagy wouldn't commit to the run. Dick Duran didn't know how to run an offense. Matt Nagy or Ben Johnson, I trust Ben Johnson. And I trust this team to win these games, because we look at Caleb Williams. This is a weird game to try and assess Caleb Williams. His numbers were lousy, right? Completed 50% of his passes. Just didn't look that good. And I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for quarterbacks and he had a lot of drop balls. His talent, not his, like the players he throws the ball to, they left a lot of yards on the field for him. And that, again, it wouldn't have been like he should have completed 75% of his passes for 350 yards, but they should have looked significantly better than they did. But that still gets us to this Caleb Williams inconsistent play. And look, at this point, he is probably the most evasive quarterback in the pocket, at least for this year in the league. I can't see anyone else who consistently is getting out of sacks the way he does. He's nimble, he's agile, he's quick, and he's strong. And he can break out of arm tackles consistently and then roll out and try and make a play. I would love to see the scramble drill improve. I've said that before. It still does not look like these receivers are doing what they need to do to try and get open on a scramble drill, or at least Caleb Williams is missing them, and I don't think that's the case. So that needs to improve. If Caleb Williams is going to continue to play this way, that should be a focal point of practice, and that needs to improve. But Caleb Williams, when the game is on the line, and I understand he did not have to throw a pass on that final drive. Devin Duvernay, great return, sets them up, a few runs, Bears are in field goal range, win the game. Like, I get it. Caleb Williams didn't do anything other than field the snap cleanly and hand it off to the running back. But we have a body of work already that shows that Caleb Williams will make the right play, the right decision, the big play, the big throw, the big run, whatever he needs to do to make sure the Bears are in a position to win games. And Ben Johnson is showing that he will make the right decision in terms of what they need to do to put themselves in position to win the football game. He's not going to have a perfect score. He already had a miss against the Vikings in week 1, but he's improving too as a head coach. Now, when you're constantly being put in a position to succeed, then the coaching staff, not just Ben Johnson, but the coaching staff, you have to give them credit. And I don't think we've talked about Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen a lot. I think you have to give a lot of credit to these assistants. And Ben Johnson is watching his post-game press conferences. It's kind of funny, right? Like, Ben Johnson, I know this is going to sound a little crass. Ben Johnson is the guy at the bar that insults the girl in hoping that he's going to pick up the girl anyway, right? Like, I feel like that's kind of what he does. Like, he talks to the girl at the bar and says, "You'd be really hot if you had a different haircut." Because the amount of times I've seen Ben Johnson in these post-game victory speeches go, we got a lot to improve upon, and we're going to talk about all of it in the tape session. Oh, man, did you guys make a lot of mistakes? But, hey, we won the game. Like, the amount that he does that is funny. Excuse me, I'm getting too excited. I'm getting choked up about the Bears being 7-3 in first place in November. But he consistently just keeps dropping those carrots that the Bears team knows that there's more work to be done, that they have to keep working and working, because he always drops it in about, we got to clean up these penalties. We got to take care of the football better. Or we whatever it is, he's, oh man, wait till we get to tape session. We got a lot to clean up. Like, the amount that he says, like, guys, you ain't there yet, but enjoy it, right? Enjoy this moment, and we'll get back to work later in the week. That's what you got to love about Ben Johnson. And let me talk about a few other items here before we get to Kevin Fishbain. And I want to get to the offensive line, because Theo Benedet is like, we're seeing the Theo Benedet issues really, like, they're not improving to a point that you'd want to see him improve. And I've said all along, Theo Benedet deserves a ton of credit for where he has gotten, where this coaching staff has gotten him, what he's been able to accomplish this year as a starting left tackle, as a second-year UDFA with bad traits. That's what Theo Benedet is. But Theo Benedet is consistently holding back this offense. And I don't like to say that, because I want to embrace the positives here with Theo, because what he's done should be applauded. But he is making mistakes, and I saw some mistakes in the running game as well. And it hasn't been that as much for Theo. It's mostly been pass blocking. But the largest one, and it turned out to be okay, when the Chicago Bears were trying to set up for the game-winning field goal, and they ran the ball on second down and lost a couple yards. That was Theo Benedet's guy. He missed the block. He came down the line of scrimmage and made the tackle. Bears lost a couple yards, and they were in no position to lose yards at that point in the game trying to set up Cairo Santos, because they were right on the outskirts of his limit in terms of how far he can kick the football. And you want to talk about Ben Johnson being a little too conservative there, and that he should have tried for a first down or two, tried to get it in the chip shot range, but he basically said, this is good enough. We're setting up for a field goal here. I think that's fair to question. I don't like questioning a lot of what Ben Johnson's done, because I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and remember that he is a first-year coach. And sometimes coaches make mistakes and they get away with it. I think you could argue that Ben Johnson made a mistake at the end of that game. He needed to play more aggressively, and he chose not to, but it still turned out okay. Had that kick missed, we would be talking about Ben Johnson's error about getting too conservative at the end of that football game. Conservative and Ben Johnson is not something we say in the same sentence very often, but it 100% was the issue in that moment. But getting back to Theo Benedet, he made a critical error there. We know the pass blocking has been suspect from him. And at this point, I don't think there's really anything the Chicago Bears can do. I see in my mentions a lot about moving Darnell Wright to left tackle. And I think that might be something they need to explore for 2026. In fact, I'll ask Kevin Fishbain about that as someone who's been around the team, because I don't see a viable path to a left tackle not named Theo Benedet in 2026 unless they spend a first-round pick. Because you can't spend a second-round pick and assume they're going to be able to start at left tackle. It's too difficult of a position. They did it with Ozzie Trapillo, and he couldn't make the transition from the right to the left side. Thus, Theo Benedet is starting. So you can't spend a second-round pick on a tackle and expect him to start as a rookie. You can if you spend a first-round pick on a left tackle, and it has to be a true left tackle. You can't do a conversion. It can't be a guard that you want to move right tackle to left tackle. You need a left tackle for the Bears in 2026, not named Theo Benedet. And if you're not spending a first-round pick on him, you really have to look at Darnell Wright moving to the left side, because I don't know if they have another path to it. I just don't see it. The Bears cannot get a left tackle in free agency. They can't. They won't have the money. They're up against the cap. I've already said it. between the DJ Moore, Cole Kmet's, Montez Sweat, Tremaine Edmonds. They've got some tough decisions to make on if these guys are living up to their contracts enough to stay on the team. You've got Brisker and Byard are both free agents. Tyreek Stevenson is available, is eligible, I should say, for a contract extension. Darnell Wright is eligible for a contract extension. They have a lot of money decisions to make. DeAndre Swift, you can save $8 million if you get rid of him, but what else can you have at running back? You can't just make Kyle Monangai your RB1 and have him getting 20 carries a game. You need more depth at the running back room. The Bears are in a tricky spot here. So at left tackle, what's the path moving forward? And for me, it might be moving Darnell Wright to the left side, at least playing with it a little bit and seeing how he looks, because I just don't know what the other path is. And that first round pick, you can absolutely use it on a left tackle, but the Bears need pass rush help. They're going to have to look at some other things as well. So there's no guarantee that they can do that in left tackle. And look, if the Bears keep winning games, they have the 22nd, 23rd, 24th pick of the draft. There's no guarantee that a quality left tackle is still going to be sitting there that late in round one. So it's going to be a little bit of a tricky situation for the Bears here with the offensive line. But I do think we can recognize that Theo Benedet is a great story, but that Theo Benedet is also a problem. And it's getting exposed more and more. As Benedet gets more tape down for defensive coaches to break down, they're attacking him more and more because that is the weak point of the offense. And you just put your thumb on the scale in that weak spot and you push as a defensive coach. And that's what they're doing. They are firing at Theo Benedet, making things more difficult on him. And it's working for defenses. He is definitely the reason in why a lot of plays are not as cohesive as they need to be. So that's an issue. I don't know if there's a way to address it this season. I don't know if there's what they've been doing in practice with Trapillo or, Braxton Jones or whatever they may want to try again. If it's just Theo the rest of the year, it might be. That's where the Bears need to be. But bottom line, it's still going to be an issue moving forward, especially when the Bears get some pretty decent edges here. I don't know, Aiden Hutchinson, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. They've got a lot of elite pass rushers down the stretch here. And they are going to be lining up against Theo Benedet, and he is going to have his hands full. Darnell Wright is going to have his hands full with these guys. You better believe Theo Benedet is going to struggle. The Chicago Bears really need to figure out a game plan to help him out. On the defensive side of the ball, the best thing I can say right now is Jalen Johnson, hopefully Kyler Gordon are back soon. Because if they are back, and they don't have to be playing phenomenal. They don't have to be playing best ball of their careers. They just need to be playing quality ball. Because if you have those two with Tyreek, Byard, Brisker, and CJ Gardner-Johnson, you have some flexibility with that secondary. You can move guys around. You can sub guys around. You can play big nickel packages. You can do some interesting things with that. And I think that would happen if the Bears get their full allotment back, because up front, they're just not going to get it done. Not that Odangbo was good, but he's not getting much. You lose Turner, not that he was doing much either. But, you just have an issue here where there's just not enough talent. Grady Jarrett looked better. If Montez Sweat and Grady Jarrett can both have big finishes to the season, maybe this Bears defensive line can be where it needs to be for this defense to improve. But if they don't, if they're just going to, and Sweat's been better. I think Sweat had a rough first few games. He played really well, and I think he's still been good, not great, the last couple of games. Grady Jarrett, I think, unquestionably had his best game of the year against Minnesota. We need to see more of that from Grady Jarrett. If these guys can play really well and you can get some focus off of Dexter, off of Austin Booker, maybe the defensive front can get more functional, because right now that is really going to hold them back against some of these better offenses that they have to play. Can you get away with it with Pittsburgh? Can you get away with it with Cleveland? Yeah, but if you let Jordan Love sit back there, if you let Jared Goff sit back there, if you let Brock Purdy sit back there with no pressure, they're going to hurt you. And the Bears need to win these football games down the stretch here. They've got to get to 10. They get to 11, they are a lock to make the playoffs. They get to 10, it still might be tiebreakers because there are 8 really viable teams vying for 7 spots here. And that's not counting Carolina, who's 6-5. I can't see. Carolina's got a pretty hard schedule down the stretch. They've got some difficult games. So I'm not buying Carolina as a viable candidate. I think they're going to lose some games, finish 8-9, 7-10. Congratulations on being 6-5, but I don't think they have enough. Tampa will distance themselves eventually and win that division. So I think there are 8 viable teams, but that means Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay, San Francisco, Seattle. One of these teams is missing the playoffs, and that's going to be a good football team that misses the playoffs. Right now, if we're being honest, in terms of talent level, Bears are probably that 8th team. But you beat Pittsburgh, you get to 8 wins. You just need to win 2 or 3 more games down the stretch here to get yourself in the playoffs. Who cares how you get in? Just get in and see what happens. So I'll just finish with this, as I know I was talking about concerns with the offensive and defensive line. Regardless of the concerns, enjoy it, Bears fans. The Chicago Bears are 7-3 and in first place in the NFC North on the day of this recording, November 18th. That is a glorious place to be. And there's only 8 teams out of 32 that can say that right now, and the Chicago Bears are one of them. So block out the noise, give the facepalm to the haters, because the Chicago Bears are a first-place team. We will talk about it with Kevin Fishbain. He joins me next. This is Bill Zimmerman, Bears Banter. We'll be right back. Welcome into the podcast. Always excited to do this guest. It's always a fun conversation. He's always got interesting facts and numbers and everything to bring to the table. He is Kevin Fishbain of The Athletic. And of course, he's also got his own podcast, Breaking In with Kevin Fishbain, where he talks to various media members about how they got their start and how they got their careers going in the media world. And Kevin joins me now. Kevin, Bill Zimmerman, how you doing?
Good, Bill. Thinking back to, we do this around this time every year, and this has got to be probably the happiest time in Bears land that we've ever gotten together to chat.
Yeah, it's been a lot of bumpy years. In fact, I was just kind of looking at it, and sure, it's an arbitrary number, but 10 games is a nice round number, and the Bears are sitting at 7-3. So I went back and looked at some of the teams in recent history, and I decided to go back to when George Halas retired. There are not a lot of 7-3 starts since George Halas hung it up. Obviously, a bunch with Ditka, quite a few with Lovey, but Ben Johnson now becomes one of only a handful of coaches that have gotten 7-3 starts past Ditka and Lovey. Obviously, Matt Nagy in 2018, the Dick Duran year, the 13-3 season. There hasn't been a lot of success. So, I know we sit here and some people in the national media are talking about how they're getting lucky and this isn't sustainable and everything. But putting all that aside, the Bears are winning games at a clip we have not seen very often over the last 50 years.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important for Bears fans to enjoy it. It's
100%.
okay if it's these wild wins. It's okay if it's not really fully sustainable. It's I don't think a whole lot of Bears fans are sitting here planning trips to Santa Clara. I think everybody kind of understands what this is and what it could be. But as you said, 7 wins in the first 10 games is just unheard of. My colleague Dan Weeder posted on Monday night the date at which Bears teams won game number 7. And I realized this is my 13th year on the beat. I've covered 6 teams that didn't even get to 7 wins an entire season. So, I think it's been, obviously there's a lot that can be said about why they're 7-3, how they're 7-3. But like my biggest message through all this is to the Bears fans, just enjoy this. Like, you guys haven't had many opportunities to talk about the playoffs and go through the postseason picture. And, the schedule gets tougher and maybe the end of the season 9-8 and so 7 or one spot out. Who knows? But right now, I think it's okay to acknowledge this has been fun. This has been a great ride. It's good that they're winning. And yeah, they're probably, this isn't the best team. Actually, Bill, I'll run this by you. One comparison, I know the 2018 team's the easiest comparison, but I thought that team's defense was just on such a level.
Sure.
Like you actually could look at that team and be like, wow, they can make a playoff run because of that defense. This team actually, I think of the 2013 Bears a little bit. I think this team's better. But remember, that team's offense was outstanding. And it's the last time they had a top 10 offense. The defense was terrible, but they took the ball away at a pretty good clip. And they were one play away from making the playoffs. And I think we all knew if that team actually made the playoffs, they were probably going to get blitzed. Now, again, that's a difference. I don't think this team is going to get blown out if they make the postseason. But it just, again, thinking of recent Bears teams that have, and that was first year Mark Trestman. So again, I think this iteration is better, but that's kind of a group I've been thinking about just because of the really good offense and defense with some holes.
Yeah, I like the comparison there. I had Patrick Manley on this podcast a couple weeks ago. I actually brought up the 2001 team to him. Now, very different in terms of structures. That was defensive oriented. Jim Miller and Caleb Williams are quite different quarterbacks. But looking at just kind of how that 2001 team won, the one-score games, the Mike Brown interception and pick sixes, the Browns Hail Mary, all the crazy stuff that happened there. To me, there was a similarity in terms of how that team was winning, the vibes, the locker room, all that compared to this team. Patrick Manley really liked that comparison. So that's another team that I look at in terms of kind of how the season's playing out when you look at teams as well.
Yeah, that's a great one because, as you said, like those kind of wild finishes and low expectations. And what's interesting about these teams we're referencing, right? 01, 18. You can even argue 13 for a second because, again, that team was one, blown coverage away from getting to the postseason. Is they were one-hit wonders. And we all know what happened in 02. We all know what happened in 14. We all knew what happened in 19. And I remember when Ryan Poles got here, his number one goal was build a consistent winner. Like he wanted sustained success, and they have been far from it. Of course, they haven't even had 1 year of success since he took over, but that's what I think is, and that's not to say that the previous regimes didn't want that. I think everybody in sports, that's everyone's goal. It's not like I'm not, this is not innovative thought here, Bill, but I did think that's something that he always talked about. Like he was willing to acknowledge that the Bears had these 1 year wonders. And so you look at this team, if they make the playoffs, I think that what we've seen from Ben Johnson thus far and the way this team is built in terms of how young some of the guys are, I think you could feel good about them being competitive moving forward because, gosh, there are so many examples in just the past 5 years. 2022 Giants, right? You look at, I don't want to put last year's Commanders in there because Jaden's injury, but you can just see how these things can turn on a dime. I think the best thing going, one of the best things going for the Bears, Bill, is Ben Johnson's not going to win Coach of the Year, and that award tends to be almost like a kiss of death for some of these guys, and that might be, it's like the goal for Ben Johnson: have a really fun, good, promising, encouraging first year, but let Mike Vrabel do what he's doing,
or
let
Shane
him win
Steichen.
the award, yeah, and so you don't have to worry about having that on your mantle because there's plenty of coaches who have that and then are out of a job a few years later.
Yeah. All right. And before we really get into the meat and potatoes of the team, I want to ask you kind of one other fun one, because I was thinking about this last night and I put out a silly tweet, and it was that Ben Johnson was already on the Mount Rushmore of Chicago Bears head coaches. And obviously he's only coached 10 games and I get all that. But unless you want to get into a Ralph Jones, who I think coached 2 years in the early 30s and won a championship. If you kind of look at this though, you got George Halas, you have Mike Ditka, you have Lovie Smith. I think those three are on there. That fourth spot, Kevin, on a Mount Rushmore is wide open for the taking. And I think probably, like I said, unless you're going really, really old, Matt Nagy may have that claim for 2 playoff appearances and the 2018 team. So if Ben Johnson has his team make the playoffs, and let's say they win 1 playoff game and then get bounced out, you could actually make the argument that Ben Johnson is already at that level in Chicago Bears history because of the one dominance of Halas, and that there's been a lot of years since George Halas where things were lean.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Bill, because as you said, if you're going modern era, I guess, or George Halas forward, and we're not counting some of those coaches in the 20s and 30s. It is wild because it's funny. I hopped on my colleague is in Pittsburgh. I was on their Steelers podcast, and I was recording with them, and I said, "Man, you guys have had Mike Tomlin since what, 2007? Is that when he started there?" And I've been on the beat since 2013, and this is my 5th head coach. So it's now again, Tomlin is an outlier. The Steelers are an absolute outlier when you're having this conversation. But it's worth noting with that matchup coming up this weekend. It's now. I think what I think of though, Bill, when you bring up that Mount Rushmore is if you and I did this recording on November 18th, 2018. We'd be talking about Matt Nagy being on that
100%
Mount Rushmore. And I do think right now, if you look at the coaches since Ditka, or certainly since Lovey, Nagy's been the best one. He's been the most successful one. And so it's like, we always have to have Matt Nagy in the back of our minds as we watch this, because he did kind of sweep up the city. And that team was so much fun. Now, we don't have to get in the weeds about the differences between two coaches because I've certainly have some observations on that. But it is worth noting that like the Bears had a young offensive mind, energetic guy who had a post-game tradition that social media loved and the players bought in and they won the division and all these things. And they were taking the ball away all the time. And their offense had trick plays with cool names and all those things. That happened 7 years ago. So again, there are differences between the two. But yeah, you always kind of have to like, I even had a buddy text me this morning, like, man, this is fun, but I just keep thinking, so was Matt Nagy, and look what happened. And I understand for Bears fans, it's hard to kind of get out of that mindset of like, when's the other shoe going to drop? Which is, again, goes back to my original point, Bill. Enjoy the ride. It's been fun right now. Just enjoy it and see where it goes.
Yeah, 100%. And I have concerns about this regime moving forward. I don't need to get into my Ryan Poles criticisms right now because things are riding high and things are fun. But like you said, things fell apart in 2018. And I think that's a good transition to get to the quarterback because obviously the quarterback not taking that step in 2019 and moving forward to 2020 is really there were other issues as well, but that was really the core issue as to why that started to fall apart. So that brings us to Caleb Williams, who's definitely had an up and down season. There's definitely things we need to see improve, but we've seen a lot of things improve, especially the sack avoidance and that sack rate going down. The yards per attempt is better, even though the completion percentage hasn't risen like even Ben Johnson wanted, putting that 70% out there. He's not going to come anywhere near that. But again, what we can enjoy is how well Caleb Williams has consistently played in the fourth quarter when it matters most. So where are you on Caleb Williams' development? Obviously, it does seem like he has the clutch gene, but there's some of the simpler things he needs to clean up. What have you seen from him so far?
Yeah, it's similar to Ben Johnson in terms of ride the roller coaster and see where it takes you. I think with Mitch Trubisky, as you said, we knew by the fall or early winter of 2019, this probably just isn't there. And that was year 3 for him, year 2 in Matt Nagy's system. You look at Justin Fields, and it was kind of similar. It was, year 2, and this is probably the most generous timeline, and these are not specific, obviously, and some people might have known earlier that it wasn't going to work. Some people still believe it should have worked. But with Fields, like I remember after that Chiefs debacle in 2023, like that was the first time I kind of wrote, this just isn't working. It's time to kind of think about what's next. So, if you use those two timelines, next fall, I think is a great, landmark for Caleb Williams. When you get kind of that full off season, Ben Johnson, it's year 2 in that playbook. You'd like to think that Ryan Poles can, and with Ben Johnson now there for the entire draft and free agency process. I mean, he was this year too, but it's just a little different. He had a lot of things he had to worry about last winter. as well, that's going to be a fascinating barometer. But as you said, I think like you can't teach that clutch gene. And I think Caleb Williams' abilities in the fourth quarter have really shown, and they shouldn't be ignored. I think that, the funny thing, Bill, about Caleb, and he brought this up last week, he wants to stay in the pocket and throw. Like he wants to be a throwing quarterback. He just happens to have this really impressive ability to throw on the run and impressive ability to feel pressure and spin out of it. And he's quick and he could take off for you. And, I think a fair critique of Caleb Williams is sometimes he hasn't run as much as he should, or sometimes, and the throws on the run have not been as accurate as we've been accustomed to with him. Those are things to work on. But yeah, the accuracy thing to me is number one. I think his awareness has been good. I feel like unlike some of the other quarterbacks we've seen in Chicago, he seems to go to the right read more often than not. So it's, I'm not as worried about like the reading the defensive stuff or understanding the play. Like my thing with him still is just, does he escape the pocket too quickly? Does he miss opportunities for checkdowns here and there? Again, all those things I think have improved from last year. Look, he's not doing this year what Drake May is doing, and that's okay. But I think it's fair to compare the two. He's not even doing what Jaden Daniels did last year. But he's also been better than a lot of guys who have come through here. So I am still looking forward to watching this thing grow, watching this thing progress. Like I can't, unfortunately, Bill, like November 18th, I can't sit here and say he's going to be the guy for the next 10 years. I also can't sit, and that's okay. You would love to be able to say that in January. I know maybe we will, but I don't know if we're going to get there.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point to be at. I think Caleb Williams is going to see a second contract here in Chicago, and I feel pretty confident about it. But that is making assumptions that there is a cleaner operation. It's better in 2025 than it was in 2024, and that it would be better in 2026 than it is in 2025. So I'm there, but I do understand it. But I did want to ask you before we do, take a little break from Bears and ask you one Vikings question, being you were there and saw him play. The J.J. McCarthy situation, I think the Vikings have made a grave error. And I understand you can't write off J.J. McCarthy. He doesn't even have a full season of reps underneath him. But I will also say, because people will point, oh, well, look what he did against the Bears in the fourth quarter, and he almost did it again. And, Mitch Trubisky had highlights that were outstanding, and he shredded man defenses and had come from behind victories in the fourth quarter as well. So there are quarterbacks who are QB2s in the league that can shine when they're younger as QB1s. The amount of errant throws he has, the turnovers, where J.J. McCarthy's at, especially being the fact that they did have Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones in the building last year. If I was a Minnesota Vikings fan, I would be really concerned about the quarterback position moving forward.
They had those two guys in the buildings, and reportedly were in conversation with Aaron Rodgers too. So, it doesn't seem like they certainly didn't come to this decision hastily. But yeah, it was jarring, Bill, to see it in person. I've been certainly reading and following and, talking to, colleagues in Minnesota about it. But just to see him just airmailing guys. After watching in Michigan, where, I know he wasn't this guy throwing the ball over the yard at Michigan, but like, I really liked his Michigan tape. I really saw things that I was like, I see why NFL teams love this guy. Like the stuff he did on third down there, and, the stuff he did in height, like there was just a lot to like. The Bears really like JJ McCarthy. But yeah, that's something that's like, I don't know where you begin there. Now, with that said, to touch on something I mentioned to your last question, in Chicago, I liked to give you liked to give these guys into their second years with the playbook, and it seems like with McCarthy, is it so bad? They're how much of a grave error, as you said, kind of was this? So, it's interesting. What was really fascinating to me about that game, Bill, and I'm curious if you kind of observed this as well. The Vikings, every time they ran the ball, they got 6 yards. It seemed like every time. And then it'd be 3rd and 3, and JJ's going back to pass. And I was just like, what is Kevin O'Connell doing? And it kind of, Mike Sando, my colleague, kind of touched on the difference between Kevin O'Connell handling JJ McCarthy and Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams. The Bears were not running the ball very well, and Ben Johnson ran it 30 plus times. And Kevin O'Connell, to me, it reminded me of some of the Matt Nagy stuff that, he was a quarterback. He's a guy who wants the offense to throw the football. And I just wondered if like that was going on a little bit with Kevin O'Connell. We're just like, he wants his quarterback to throw, which I get it. But man, like if they just ran the ball a lot throughout like the third quarter, I think that game might have gone a little differently. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting thing to watch in Minnesota. I hope they figure it out because again, you don't want to see a guy like that just become a total bust. And he was so fun to watch earlier, in his college career, but that's going to be a very, very fascinating developments to see.
Yeah, it really is. And I agree with you. There were opportunities there for Minnesota to run the ball more, but you do kind of see the trend that offensive coaches want to throw and defensive coaches want to run. And that just kind of seems to be almost universal in the league. But, speaking of running the football, let me ask you about the Bears offensive line, because obviously this unit is vastly improved from last year. We've seen a lot of improvement across the line. Darnell Wright might even be like maybe second team All-Pro this year. Tooney hasn't lost a step. It's been really positive. And Theo Benedet is a great story. But Theo Benedet certainly has some flaws in his game. It certainly has impacted their pass protection. It almost the running play at the end of the game against Minnesota where Swift lost a few yards, almost knocked them out of field goal range again. That was Benedet's block that came down and made the tackle. So there's issues there with Theo. Where are you on this offensive line unit as a whole? And do you trust Theo Benedet moving forward, or do you think they need to try something else?
Yeah, I remember talking to Robert Mays about this in the summer. And we were talking about the left tackle spot. Because at the time, is it going to be Braxton Jones? Is it going to be Ozzie Trapillo? Is it going to be Karan Amagaji? At that point, Theo Benedet was fourth in line. And I remember we kind of said, like, if you're the fifth best offensive lineman on this group, that's what we're talking about here. And it's not meant as a slight at Benedet. It's just look at the guys who's up there with him and look at where he's at in his experience level. It's just, you get it. So it's this balance of it's okay for that guy to be the fifth best. It just can't be a liability. You just can't teeter on that line where it's costing you. And I think that they love what he does in the run game. And I think they really see, and also you gotta, to touch on your point about being a good story, you got to give some credit to Ben Johnson's staff that like they could have taken a one look at this guy and just gone, not our guy, not our problem. We're not even going to give him a look. So it's credit to them. But yeah, like, does Ozzie Trapillo, I don't know. We don't get to watch all of practice. You'd like to think Ozzie Trapillo is getting some left tackle reps in practice. And does he, do we reach a point where Ozzie's just performing at a really high level and they feel like there can be a competition there? My guess is Theo gets the rest of the season just because they're kind of rolling right now. And, you want that continuity. And they just got to, periodically they might have to find ways to help them. And then you have an interesting conversation. It's funny, Bill, because I remember back in the summer, I said the ideal situation for the Bears left tackle spot would be if Braxton Jones played all year, was solid, was what Braxton Jones brings you, and you felt great about what Ozzie Trapillo could be. Jones moves on, signs elsewhere, you get a comp pick, or at least helps your comp pick formula, and you have a guy in-house who can start day one for you, and you feel really good about that. In a way, I kind of feel like that's still, it's a different calculation now with Theo and where Braxton Jones is, but like, a lot of this future stuff hinges on what Ozzie Trapillo can be. And if the answer after a full year of watching him is like, maybe he's just going to be a long-term backup for us, then you got to have serious conversations about left tackle, because you want to get in a bigger picture, Bill. You look at Caleb, you talk about second contract, you look at the window they're operating in right now. If you feel like 2026 can be a massive year, a massive opportunity,
it has to be, yeah,
then you need to feel great about that position, whether that's Theo Benedet, whether it's Ozzie Trapillo, whether that is going out and signing a veteran or using your first round pick on it. So it's going to be Yeah, I think left tackle is and defensive end are kind of those two positions where it's going to be their premium spots, and they're going to be, top of mind come January through April.
Yeah, and I'll ask you one kind of other big picture question about left tackle, because you talked about maybe making a move for 2026. They're kind of up against it on the cap, and they're going to have to move some money around and maybe cut or trade a couple veterans here. I think it's going to be an interesting offseason for Chicago, but they, like you said, bring in a veteran. They may not be able to spend 15, 20, 25 million a year on a left tackle. It may have to be a first round pick or a second round pick, but putting that aside, because maybe the board doesn't fall that way. And obviously you can sit there and say, oh, they should draft one. If they're unable to draft one for whatever reason, would you consider moving Darnell Wright to the left side so Ozzie Trapillo can play on the right side?
Yeah, I think it's a conversation you have. Frankly, I'm surprised that they didn't try it. They said they were going to be open to it, and then they kind of didn't. And I don't really know the ins and outs of that. And it's really intriguing because, as you said at the top, Darnell Wright is playing like an all-pro right now. Like, do you take advantage of that and see what he could be on the left side if you think Ozzie Trapillo can be really good on the right side, and then you're in great set, you're in great situation? Yeah, I think it's going to be it might be, I would expect that to be a question to Ryan Poles in January about that plan. The other thing with Darnell Wright is he is eligible for a contract extension at the end of the season. Doesn't mean he can get it, but if you're Darnell Wright's people, if you're thinking, you want us to move to left tackle? All right. We see what the money is over at the left on the left side. So, that could be that could certainly be a factor in that conversation. But yeah, that's an interesting one, because if they really think Trapillo's at his best on the right side, and they think Darnell Wright can handle the left, and you give him the full winter, spring, summer to figure it out, that might be the best five.
Yeah, no, it could be. So I'm going to be fascinated how they approach the offensive line in the offseason. Let me just ask you about the two rookies, Luther Burden and Colston Loveland. I think we've seen a lot of growth out of them the last couple of weeks. Burden's snap count has really jumped. Seems like, Ben Johnson's finally starting to trust him in the offense. Whatever it was, why his snap count was limited earlier, whatever the reason was there, I assume it was just growth and development. But what have you seen from these two? Because it seems if these two really come into their stride and really start playing well down the stretch, that's going to open up different avenues to this offense.
Yeah, when the numbers were down, and I know Loveland had the injury too, like, I got to tell you, Bill, I was never concerned about him. Like, I saw more than enough in training camp to be like, okay, I don't know what this guy could be, but he's not going to be a bust. And I thought, or it might have been the Baltimore game. Remember the Baltimore game, ended the first half. The offense got kind of out of sync, and they ended up having to back up. They got backed up. There was an intentional grounding. And I want to say it was a Baltimore game. I remember talking to Caleb Williams afterwards, and he said something, maybe it was on Wednesday. He said something about being able to trust throwing the ball down to Colston Loveland and let him get 10, 15 yards because he's capable of that. Fast forward to Minnesota, 3rd and 13. Loveland kind of a delayed leak out into the middle of the field. Caleb hits him, and there he goes. And he's just like, he's a battering ram, and he's got wide receiver traits and a tight end's body. He's been good at blocking too. I think if you watch that last run from Swift, you can see Loveland and Kmet really doing a nice job on the right side there. So I think Bears fans can be really excited about what Loveland can be. And Burden, like, he's everything they told us he was going to be. You put the ball in his hands,
he's electric.
He does some great things, and it was stunning to see him drop a pass, because that, like, I think heading into that game, he had caught 16 of the 18 balls thrown his way. So that was a bit jarring. You hope it was just a one-off and doesn't get in his head. Obviously, young player. I think with Burden, I think one of the reasons it took some time was just that rookie of, like, knowing everything you need to know playbook wise for the coaches to kind of trust you out there. I think there's kind of a lot, we see that with rookies all the time. But the skill set's there. So I think I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, Ryan Poles hit. We got, the Bears are set with these two guys for the next 5-10 years. But I think we've seen really positive things from them as rookies. And if their numbers are not Tyler Warren and I don't know who the best rookie. Ibuka right now is the best rookie receiver. I don't think that's a slight on them as so much as you just have an offense that is still working itself out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you about the defensive side of the ball. You know, there's a lot of different avenues we can get to. I don't need to dive into every aspect of it, but Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, maybe they're coming back here in the next couple of weeks. That would be a big boost to the secondary. But the defense, I know less points were put up on the board by Minnesota, but at the same time, JJ McCarthy, as we talked about earlier, he missed a lot of open receivers, and that could have been a very different game. We've seen a defense that definitely has some warts. Where are you at this defense? And is there anything you think? I mean, there's obviously they didn't make any big moves at the deadline. What can maybe this team do to maybe improve the pass rush and do some of the things they need to do to try and be a more consistent defense that can do more than just turn the football over? Because if they don't turn the football over, they're giving up 450 yards of offense.
Yeah, you kind of need Montez Sweat to play like Superman. I think that's number one. And in Sweat's defense, I think over the last month, he's played really well. Vikings game, he batted down that one pass, had another quarterback hit, didn't get the sack, didn't get maybe that impact, the major impact play. Although if they had forced a turnover on downs, I think he got that pass batted on third down, we'd be talking more about that play. But I think when you look at the roster and as you said, like this is who they've got. It's the old Gene Hackman. My team is on the field. That's the guy that needs to just continue to be a force for you, because if he starts commanding more attention, like the hope is that could open things up. I think Austin Booker's done some nice things. The coaches seem to trust him a ton. He played 51 of the 54 snaps on Sunday in Minnesota. We're talking about, a fourth round pick who missed the first 7 games of the season. That's telling. But to me, it starts with Sweat. And then the Gervon Dexter thing is interesting, Bill, because I think we all know what he's capable of, and we all have seen him make those splash plays. And the dude is just, there's not many people in the world built like him that can do the things that he can do. And I think from a number standpoint, he's actually done a fine job. But like, what level can he get to? Because that's the flip side. So Montez Sweat is someone, okay, what he can be. Let's try to get it consistently. With Gervon Dexter, you think what he could be. Can he get his game up to some ridiculous level that he hasn't reached yet? Because I think that's what you're looking for. Is you need like your young guys to pop. You need Dexter to pop. You need Booker to pop. It's just a shame that we don't get to see Shamar Turner the rest of the year, because I thought he has started to do some nice things there before the injury. But that's what you're looking for, because the rest of the defense, you kind of know what these guys can do. But so that's why you look at these second, third, fourth year guys. You can throw Tyreek Stevenson. I think Tyreek's had a really nice season. Can he continue that? But can some of these younger guys really up their game? And could go back to the 2018 comparison, Bill. There were some guys on defense in 2018. That's what they did. They had career years. And then, things kind of tailed off for some of those guys in 19 and 20. And it was part of the reason that group couldn't reclaim that. But that's what you're looking for, is you got to, if this defense, like right now for 2025, you need the guys who are out there to, try to take their game to levels that they haven't been to.
All right. And last question for you here on the defense for 2026. Byard, and I'm going to ask you about these 3 guys in the secondary and Tremaine Edmonds. With Tyreek Stevenson eligible for a contract extension, with Byard and Brisker both being free agents, and Tremaine Edmonds having pretty much no guaranteed money left, and that's $18 million. With the Bears being up against the cap, who would you re-sign? Who would you let walk? And including Tremaine Edmonds, would you pick up that last year of his contract?
Man,
tough questions.
It is. It's Tremaine Edmonds has been one of the best players in the defense,
100%,
and he's still young. Like I think you got to move forward with him, especially when we know how important that linebacker spot is in Dennis Allen's scheme. I think Tyreek Stevenson. I think with Stevenson and Brisker, I think it is Those two are probably like I don't think you have to give Tyreek Stevenson an extension after this year. He's done some really nice things. And I'm going back a little back and forth.
It's hard. It's hard to figure this out.
It's hard. And you know what? I remember sitting down Ryan Poles in 2024. And he talked about one of the things he really took note of at the Chiefs is if you have success, that's when the real tough decisions come. And that's what he's going to face this offseason. So, you know, like what's Deshaun Wright's future? Is Terrell Smith? Does he get himself back into conversation? Obviously, he got hurt and missed the whole year. Yeah, like there's guys at corner, which makes me feel like maybe you don't need to extend Stevenson. But then again, like if he continues to play the way he's played, you could argue he's earned it. And the sad thing about the way these things are, and Bill, you know how much of a business this is, they could look at Jaquan Brisker and say, some of this injury stuff, we're just too nervous to be able to give you a big contract. With Kevin Byard, they could look at his age and say, you've had a great year from us, but like, you know, can you bring Byard back on a 1 year, you know, deal? Like I don't know. Those are all tough questions. Good problems to have. I don't think I gave you an answer because I'm all over. I think the one thing I feel confident about is I think you have to keep Edmonds. I know it's a massive cap number, but I think you have to keep him when you consider his age, his ability, and you don't have anybody else at that position right now who can step in.
Could you extend him and bring that cap number down for 2026? Right. Maybe that's something else they could do. So there he is, Kevin Fishbain. You can read him at The Athletic, and of course check out the podcast Breaking In, where he talks to a lot of great media members on how they got their careers started. Huge guest list there. Make sure you check it out. Kevin, thanks for so much time. Great interview, and we'll do it down the line.
All right, take care, Bill.
All right, there he is, Kevin Fishbain, everybody. Always a good interview with Kevin. Hope you enjoyed that one as much as I do. And I do mean it. Make sure you check out his podcast. He's got a lot of really good broadcasters on that podcast already, and it's only been going a couple months. So if you like broadcasting, if you want to hear from broadcasters, I highly recommend checking that out. So, of course, let's not forget, little mention of the Second City Gridiron merchandise. Make sure you pick up Second City Gridiron merchandise. If you listen to this channel, support this channel, support its creators. They are trying to give you the best Bears content week in and week out. So if you're enjoying this stuff, a mug, a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, a hat, whatever it might be, we would be very appreciative of you if you went out and did that for us and got that Second City Gridiron name out there in the Chicago Bears world. So let's get to the mailbag. Mailbag a little shorter this year because Twitter didn't want to work today. I know it technically wasn't their fault. Whatever was down. And it's a little alarming how easily half the internet could just disappear because the software companies having problems one morning. Like, I understand the internet. Oh, you put it up there, it's there forever. Or is it? Or is it only up there for as long as these software companies exist? Because I swear to God, sometimes it's a little alarming how easily it becomes problematic here. So, intermittent on Twitter all morning here at the time we're recording this. So not too many responses, but thank you for those of you who did get them in. But that's okay because I have things I need to talk about at the Bears' upcoming game. It's going to be more than 90 seconds. So we'll jump in here. Let's start with Joe Tucio with the stories of polls calling about Garrett and Jermaine Johnson. Do you think he takes a big swing next offseason for a pass rusher? Maybe. How about that for a non-committal answer, Joe? Look, the problem here is salaries and what they're going to do on the defensive side of the ball. Does it make sense for them to swing for a big-time pass rushing presence? Yes, it does. 100%. Will they? I don't know because they don't have the money to do it. And they don't have the money to do it really if they move a bunch of guys around. Like, they got to make money. They got to move money around just to have enough to fill out the roster. So taking that a step further, they really need to get creative in terms of how they're going to do things. Now, you want to tell me that they're going to do a sign and trade with a team and trade Montez Sweat and get a legit big-time top 5 pass rusher in here and Sweat's money comes off the board and that new team has a viable player and the Bears bring in a viable, an all-time great defensive end, okay, well, then that's a creative way the Bears can go about doing that. That doesn't solve their issue on the other side. And the problem here is, and look, Joe, this is where we're going to start having these questions. And I don't want to spend too much time focused on negatives because I'm excited the Bears are in first place. But they went out and gave $48 million to Dayo Odengbo. 2/3 of that is guaranteed, which means Dayo Odengbo is coming back next year. It makes no sense to cut him. They're going to eat way too much of the money unless he's willing to give him an injury settlement based on the injury he's got this year. Which, if he doesn't, then Bears are stuck with him next year. He may not be a viable player coming off that injury. So it's a bad signing. And it's not a bad signing because he got hurt. It doesn't help that he got hurt, but he wasn't productive beforehand. I said in the moment, I don't like that. You're playing a player for what you think he might become, not for who he is. Bears gave a bad contract to Odengbo. Right now, they gave a bad contract to Grady Jarrett. Now, maybe Grady Jarrett recovers. Maybe his issue has been he's been playing hurt, and he hasn't been able to be as fully explosive as he needs to be. He was better against Minnesota. Maybe he's much better here down the stretch. But what Grady Jarrett has been so far hasn't been worth the money he was given. So when the Bears suddenly have big dollars committed to non-productive players, and you say, will they go out and get a big edge? They may not have the money to do it. They've already got, per year, what do they already have coming? 55, 60 million coming across the board on the front, on the defensive line. You can't spend your entire cap on the trenches. It's important. You should spend a big chunk on it, but they may not have the money to go out and get an edge next year unless they get really creative or really hard and strict with who's staying and who's going. So, Joe, I really can't answer that right now. I wish I could give you a better answer, but it's really dependent on how they decide to structure things this offseason because they do have to get creative in terms of how they're going to make everything work in 2026. David Glenn says he's got a two-part defense question. Number one, does Booker have what it takes to be the man, or is he just a situational rusher? Two, the secondary has been a strength despite injuries. Don't brutalize me too much, but how much better could we expect them to be with Johnson and Gordon back? Turnovers decrease. No, I don't think turnovers would decrease. Look, Nahshon Wright is getting turnovers, but I think that's largely because of the Dennis Allen scheme. I don't think Nahshon Wright is some incredible ball hawk. I think Kyler Gordon absolutely has to be. Now, Jalen had the year a couple of years ago where he was getting a heavy amount of picks. He's not necessarily a pick guy, but even if the turnovers do decrease, and look, they're not consistent. They had a little lull here. They got some more largely because JJ McCarthy is terrible. But bottom line here is, and I said it before, if they get both these guys back and you can have the threesome of Tyreek, Jalen, and Kyler out there at corner, and Brisker and Byard, that is an elite secondary. And you still got CJ Gardner-Johnson. Now, the nice thing about CJ, he can play safety, he can play nickel, he can do some different things. If you want to do dime packages and get CJ out there, maybe drop to one backer, maybe drop to 3 down defensive linemen, get some creativity going out there. You do 3 down defensive linemen, but you blitz a linebacker, you blitz someone from the secondary, because at that point, Brisker, think about it. Edwards, Edmonds, Brisker, CJ, and Tyreek to an extent, and Kyler, they're all good blitzers. They've got a lot of good blitzers coming from the back seven. So to me, what this does if they get really healthy is Dennis Allen can get more creative on blitz packages and be more confident that he's going to be able to have sticky coverage in the secondary where the quarterback won't be able to torch the blitz when he brings it, given them more opportunity for that blitz to work. So to me, getting these guys back, it is the hope in terms of how this defense improves, because right now, and you heard me ask it to Kevin Fishbain there. Right now, there's not a lot they can do. So it's get healthy, and then how much of a strength can the back seven be in terms of helping out the front four, which is insufficient if we're just being honest. JD Brown, I hear those fish can have a real wet blanket effect. Will you be playing the role of the optimist for the season and what we've seen so far in the next banter. So he's asking about I said, let's go fishing for some mailbag questions. That's the hint, Kevin Fishbain. And yes, I think Kevin's overall pretty optimistic. Yes, he's got some concerns and criticisms about Caleb and the viability. I do too, but that's why I'm saying, JD, let's enjoy this one, because right now the Chicago Bears are winning football games. Unorthodox, it's not pretty, whatever you want to call it. The Chicago Bears are winning football games. And last one, and I was saving this for last because it transitions into where we're at. Cav Manning. Would you rather beat Aaron Rodgers or beat Green Bay in Chicago? He says, it's a hard choice. Lost to Green Bay so much. What's one more time? A lot more years to beat them. It's last chance to stick it to Rodgers on his way out the door. I want Rodgers. Doubt he will play, though. All right. So let's get to that here. I'm going to clear my throat. Hang on. All right. Cav and to Bears fandom. Let's talk about this week's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'm going to say something I don't say very much ever to anyone. There's a few people that are on this list, but there's not many. I hate Aaron Rodgers. I loathe Aaron Rodgers. It certainly doesn't help about who Aaron Rodgers, what he did to the Chicago Bears for 15 years. But it's who Aaron Rodgers is as well. You know, for people who are not criminals, because I think there's this distinction, right? There are horrible human beings that have done horrible things to people, and they are in prison for lifetimes. Not counting those people. In terms of people who are just, pardon my French, assholes, Aaron Rodgers is possibly number one on my list in life. I loathe this person this much. And the fact that he has taken my favorite football team and slapped them around for 15 years is enough for me to want to puke every time I think about this guy. The owning, the cockiness, the belittling, everything he's done. And he is a terrible human being. Whatever people want to say about him, he is a terrible human being. Politics aside, I'm not even talking about his anti-vax stuff and all that stuff. And yes, I'm liberal. I don't like Aaron Rodgers' politics. But that aside, like, he doesn't talk to his family. The idea, like, you see his ex-girlfriends talking about how he treats them. He is a bad human being. His teammates, a lot of them talk about him in not so generous of a light when they're no longer with him. You saw what he did to poor Broderick Jones, because Broderick Jones was excited. And look, Broderick Jones tackled his 40-year-old quarterback, a few weeks ago. I get it. You can't do that. You could hurt Aaron Rodgers. He's a frail old man. I get it. Aaron Rodgers, get up, pull your offensive lineman aside who's trying to keep defensive players off your ass because you can't move anymore, and you're going to yell at him and belittle him on national television in front of everyone on the side. Put your arm around him and be like, look, kid, can't do that to me, bud. All right? Find someone else who's 25 years old and jump on their back. You can't do that to me, man. We are playing the same game, but we are playing two different games. You cannot do that to me, all right? Go out there and knock somebody's head off. That's what you do if you're a leader. Aaron Rodgers doesn't do that. He gets up, pushes them, and treats the kid like crap, because that's who Aaron Rodgers is. I loathe that human being. So, Cav, now again, for the Chicago Bears to make the playoffs, they need to split with the Green Bay Packers. If they beat the Green Bay Packers twice, then they're almost certainly going to be in the playoffs this year, because that's 9 wins. And you win like one more, and now you've knocked out the Packers is what you've done if you beat them twice, right? That you're giving them 5 losses. They've got some tough games coming up. Packers go 9-7-1. They're toast. So if the Bears beat them twice, they're going to just finish off the Packers. But to make the playoffs, they need to split with the Packers. So to make the playoffs, yes, you'd rather have the Bears beat the Packers. That's more important. But for me personally, for 15 years of humiliation and 15 years of just building up just the anger and agitation and just disgust I have for that man? Yes, 100%. I want to beat Aaron Rodgers. I want Aaron Rodgers to play the worst football game he's ever done. I want Aaron Rodgers to look like what he did a couple weeks ago on national television, where he was a humiliation. His QBR, I think, was 4, whatever it was. And I'm not exaggerating. Go look it up. I want that Aaron Rodgers against the Chicago Bears. I want Dennis Allen to dial up blitzes, knock him on his ass. I want interceptions galore. I want Aaron Rodgers to walk out of Soldier Field with his tail between his legs because he got humiliated the last time he played the Chicago Bears. And you can have all the success. You can have the Randall Cobb play. You can have all the BS he's done to the Bears over the years. But the final taste in his mouth is going to be bitter, and he's going to know that Chicago got the best of him the last time he played him. So yes, Cav, I want Aaron Rodgers to play, and I would much rather risk Aaron Rodgers beating the Bears and having 350 yards and 3 touchdowns just so they have the opportunity to just dismantle him and make him look like the old decrepit quarterback that he is and send him off with his head hung low. That's what I want, Cav. I don't need Mason Rudolph playing. The Bears beat Rudolph, lose to Rudolph, whatever. I want Aaron Rodgers, and I want to beat his ass. As for the prediction, Bears are winning this week. Rudolph or Rodgers, they're winning this football game. I am confident about it, and I don't think this is coming down to last-second Majestics and pulling one out of there you-know-what. I think they win this game. I think they win it handily. I think they win by 10 points, 14 points. I think they are going to deliver a beatdown to this organization. I just feel it. I feel like things are going to really come together this week for the Chicago Bears. I don't have it other than the vibes, baby. I have it in the vibes. And I hope Aaron Rodgers plays. And right now they're saying at the time of this recording, he does not need surgery. He does have a broken bone in his non-throwing hand, and it's just a matter of wrapping it and protecting it. But this is 2025, baby. Protect it and get him out here. You go, Aaron wants to play. Aaron wants to play. If Aaron Rodgers wants to play in this game, he's going to play in this game. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't play in this game, he does not want to play the Chicago Bears team. I said it. That's what this comes down to. Aaron Rodgers has played with a ripped up knee for half a season. He can absolutely play through a small fracture in his wrist in his non-throwing hand. He doesn't do anything with it. He's a one-armed quarterback. He doesn't move at this point. Aaron Rodgers can play if Aaron Rodgers wants to play, and let's beat his ass. That's going to do it for Bears Banter. We'll talk to you next week. Bear down, everybody. Adios.